I never expected it to happen, not in the way it did. When I look back, it all seems so easy to explain away. So simple, really. But the reality was far more complicated than I ever imagined. I had always thought of myself as someone who had everything under control. I married young, and my husband James, and I built a life together. He was everything I could have asked for: kind, supportive, loving, and totally devoted. We didn't have the flashy kind of marriage some people envy, but we had something real. Or, at least, I thought we did. Our life was predictable, and while predictability isn't necessarily a bad thing, there was something about it that began to suffocate me after a while. I loved James, of course. He was my best friend, the person I turned to when I needed support. But as time went on, I began to feel restless, bored, even. Maybe it was the monotony of it all. The same routine day after day, the same conversations, the same expectations. It wasn't that I was unhappy, not at all, but I started to crave something more, something different. James had a demanding job. He worked long hours and traveled frequently for business, which meant he wasn't always home. In the beginning, I appreciated the time alone. It gave me space to focus on myself, on my hobbies, on my friends. I was independent and enjoyed my own company, or so I told myself. But slowly, I began to notice how empty the house felt when he wasn't around. It was like I had everything I needed, except for someone to share it with. The silence was deafening. I tried filling it with activities, but nothing seemed to satisfy that longing inside me. I'd tell myself it was just a phase, that I'd get over it, but the truth was, I wanted more. And that's when it started. I didn't plan it. It wasn't something I woke up one morning thinking I'd do. It started so small, so harmless, that it seemed innocent at the time. It was a casual flirtation with a guy at the gym. We had some light banter about the exercises we were doing, nothing out of the ordinary. He made me laugh, and for a brief moment, I felt like myself again. I was used to being seen as James' wife, but in that moment I was just me. At first, I didn't think much of it. It was just a flirtation. Who wouldn't enjoy a little attention, right? A part of me convinced myself that it was harmless. After all, I wasn't doing anything wrong. I still loved James, didn't I? I just needed a little excitement, a small escape from the routine. I told myself that was all it was, nothing more. But one night, a few weeks later, that guy, Aaron, messaged me on social media. He asked if I wanted to grab coffee. I hesitated for a moment. Was this crossing a line? But I told myself it was just coffee, just a casual hangout. It wouldn't hurt anyone. I could keep it innocent, I convinced myself. The coffee turned into a drink. The drink turned into a dinner. And then, well, one thing led to another. We ended up in his apartment, laughing and talking, but then there was the kiss. I couldn't deny it. There was a spark. Something I hadn't felt in years. I pulled away, suddenly unsure. What was I doing? But he smiled at me, gently brushing a lock of hair from my face. You don't have to pretend, you know, he said softly. And that was all it took. I couldn't help myself. I kissed him again, and before I knew it, we were in bed together. It felt like a betrayal in the back of my mind, but at that moment, it felt exhilarating. It felt like I was alive again. Like I mattered. Like I was more than just James' wife, more than the woman who did the same thing every day. The guilt came later, of course. Afterward, I lay in bed next to Aaron, staring at the ceiling, my heart racing. I couldn't believe what had just happened. But at the same time, I felt a rush, a thrill that I hadn't felt in years. I didn't know how to process it. I told myself it was a one-time thing, that it was a mistake, that I was just lost in the moment. The next day, I convinced myself I'd never see Aaron again. I deleted his number, blocked him on social media, and tried to forget about it. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. I could go back to my life with James and pretend it never happened. But it wasn't that easy. The temptation was stronger than I expected. I found myself thinking about Aaron constantly, wondering what it would be like to feel that way again. And then, I ran into him at the gym. I tried to ignore him, but he caught my eye, a small smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. It was like we shared a secret no one else knew. The flirtations began again, and this time, they were harder to resist. I kept telling myself that it didn't mean anything, that I wasn't doing anything wrong. But the more I convinced myself, the more I fell into the trap. Aaron and I began seeing each other more frequently, sneaking around, trying to keep it hidden. I kept it under wraps, careful not to let James suspect anything. I didn't want to hurt him, but the pull of excitement was too strong to ignore. The affair didn't end after Aaron. There were others. Each time, it was the same, an escape from the monotony, a moment of excitement that filled the emptiness inside me. Each affair was like a temporary fix, but the more I indulged, the more I realized that nothing was ever enough. Each man gave me a temporary high, but as soon as it was over, I felt emptier than before. The cycle continued, but I didn't know how to stop it. I knew I was playing a dangerous game, but I couldn't help myself. James was still there, still the husband who loved me, still the man who trusted me. I told myself that as long as I didn't get caught, it didn't matter. I justified my actions over and over, convincing myself that it wasn't really cheating. But deep down, I knew what I was doing. And I knew that sooner or later, the truth would come out. But for a while, I didn't care. As the months passed, the lies became a normal part of my life. I started weaving a web of excuses so intricate, I almost believed them myself. My days were filled with work, social events, and the occasional girls' night out. That was actually a front for my meetings with other men. Every time I left the house, I was putting on a mask, pretending everything was fine, pretending to be the wife that James thought he knew. At first, I was careful. I didn't want to get caught. I knew I had to be discreet. James was a smart man, and I couldn't afford to slip up. I told myself that I was in control of the situation, that I could keep everything balanced. After all, James had a demanding job, and he traveled a lot. He wouldn't notice, I reasoned. But as time went on, I became more reckless. I began to push the limits, testing just how far I could go without being discovered. It wasn't that I didn't love James anymore. It wasn't even that I wanted to hurt him. It was more like I was searching for something, and the more I found, the more I needed. The affair with Aaron had opened a door I couldn't close, and each new encounter left me more empty than the last. I started to feel like I was living two lives, and at times, it felt exhausting. I would go home to James, shower him with affection, and pretend like everything was perfect between us. He would talk about his day, tell me how much he appreciated me, and I would smile, kiss him, and say all the right things. I became so good at pretending, I started to believe it myself, but deep down I knew I was lying, to him. To myself. The guilt was there, sure. Every time I crawled into bed next to James, I felt the weight of what I was doing. But the fear of being caught was even stronger. I told myself that, if I was careful enough, if I kept things under control, I could keep my secret and my marriage intact. I started keeping a tighter grip on my actions. No more late nights out without a good excuse. No more spontaneous trips to places where I could run into people who might recognize me. I tried to cover my tracks as best as I could, erasing text messages, deleting emails, clearing my browser history. I became paranoid about leaving behind any evidence, but it never fully went away. The nagging fear that one day, one little mistake would unravel everything. But despite my precautions, I couldn't shake the feeling that James was starting to notice something. There were subtle changes in his behavior. He'd ask me questions I hadn't expected. Questions that seemed innocent enough, but they made my heart skip a beat. "How was your day?" He'd ask, his eyes a little too intense, his tone a little too casual. It made me wonder if he knew, if he was sensing something was off. But he never said anything outright. He was always so trusting, so loving, that it almost felt cruel to think he suspected me. And yet, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that he was watching me more closely than he ever had before. One day, I came home to find him sitting at the kitchen table, a pile of papers in front of him. I froze when I saw him, unsure of what was happening. He didn't even look up when I walked in. He was scribbling something on a notepad, his brow furrowed, lost in thought. For a moment, it felt like he was deliberately ignoring me, but then he glanced up, his expression neutral. "Hey," I said, forcing a smile, trying to act normal. "Hey," he replied, not missing a beat. "How was your day?" He said it like he always did, but I could feel something had shifted. The air between us felt thick, like there was a secret we were both holding. I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water, trying to act casual, but my hands were shaking. The whole situation felt wrong. I could feel the weight of his gaze on me, even though he wasn't looking directly at me. It was like he was studying me, trying to figure me out. I felt exposed, like he could see through me. "Everything good?" I asked, turning to face him. "Yeah," he said, finally setting down the papers. "I just got some stuff to go over." I nodded, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew something. His eyes seemed too focused, too intense. That night, we went to bed like we always did. He pulled me close, his arm wrapping around my waist, and for a moment, everything felt normal again. But I couldn't relax. My mind raced. Had he seen something? Was he onto me? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't keep living this double life. Eventually, I was gonna slip up. And when I did, there would be no going back. But the next few weeks passed in a blur of routine, and I convinced myself it was just my paranoia. I kept up the same pattern, spending time with James when I had to, sneaking around when I didn't. There were more affairs. I didn't know why I kept doing it. Maybe I was trying to prove something to myself, or maybe I just couldn't stop. But it didn't feel good anymore. It didn't feel like the thrill I had at the beginning. It felt like a cycle I couldn't escape from, a pattern of behavior I couldn't control. And yet, every time I went to bed next to James, I told myself I wasn't doing anything wrong. I convinced myself that I wasn't the kind of person who would ever destroy her marriage, that I could stop whenever I wanted. But deep down, I knew I was lying. Then came the day that everything changed. I never expected it to come out like this. I had imagined 1,000 different scenarios where the truth came to light. None of them good. But nothing could have prepared me for the moment when my entire world came crashing down in front of me. The way my heart dropped into my stomach, how I felt like I couldn't breathe. It was like time stopped, and the reality of what I'd done hit me all at once, hard and unforgiving. It was our 10th anniversary. A milestone, one that we had both been looking forward to for months. James had been planning something special, but I had no idea what. I should have been excited. But instead, a deep sense of dread settled in the pit of my stomach. I'd been living on borrowed time for too long, and now it felt like everything was about to catch up with me. I tried to push the feeling aside, telling myself it was just nerves, but I couldn't shake the thought that this might be the night everything fell apart. James had been acting a little strange leading up to the anniversary. He was more attentive than usual, maybe because he was excited about the surprise he was planning. He made reservations at our favorite restaurant, where we'd had our first date, and I thought, maybe this will be a reminder of what we have, a chance to reconnect. But that night, nothing felt normal. We had dinner, we laughed, we talked about our life together. For a few hours, it felt like nothing had changed. But when we got home, the atmosphere shifted. I didn't know what to expect, but I didn't expect this. As we walked into the house, James smiled at me. "I have a surprise for you," he said. I thought it would be a gift, maybe a photo album or something sweet and sentimental. But what he handed me was a small box, no bigger than a DVD case. "You've been looking for something, haven't you?" he asked, his voice calm, but there was something about his tone that made me uneasy. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to smile, but feeling that tight knot in my chest. He didn't answer, just handed me the box and gestured toward the living room. "You'll understand when you see this." I had no idea what he was talking about, but I walked over to the TV and slid the DVD into the player, trying to hide the shaking of my hands. The screen flickered to life, and at first, I thought it was just a regular anniversary video, something sweet, our old photos, moments from our travels. But as the images began to play, my heart stopped. I didn't know what I was looking at, but my body reacted before my mind could catch up. It was footage of me with other men. It was so surreal, watching myself in the background of these clips. There I was, smiling, laughing, talking with men I didn't think James had ever noticed. But then the footage shifted. Men I recognized, men I'd slept with, men I'd told myself were just a part of some temporary escape. There was Aaron, the first one. That damn smile, that glint in his eyes. I'd forgotten I had been so reckless around him. Then there were others, guys from work, men I'd met through friends. It was like a punch to the gut, each face flashing on the screen. I couldn't look away. I felt sick. My breath became shallow, and I felt the heat rise to my cheeks. I wanted to scream, to tell him it wasn't what it looked like, but there was no use. I turned to look at James, and that's when I saw it. His face was calm, too calm. But his eyes were full of disappointment, hurt, and something I couldn't quite place. "You've been hiding this from me for how long?" he asked softly, the question more of a statement than a query. James, I didn't mean for this to happen. Please, let me explain," I stammered, but the words didn't come out right. I couldn't form coherent sentences. The guilt and fear were choking me, suffocating me. I thought I could keep up the act, that I could explain it away, but I knew it was too late. I had nowhere to hide. James stood there, silent, for what felt like an eternity. His face, usually so warm and full of love, was now hard, unreadable. He didn't need to say anything. The silence between us was louder than any argument could have been. He had seen everything. Then he spoke, and his voice cut through the air like a knife. I've known for a while. I didn't know how to confront you about it. So I let you keep lying to my face. Let you think you were getting away with it. My stomach dropped. I could feel the blood draining from my face, the full weight of his words sinking in. You've known. I repeated, unable to comprehend. Yeah, he said quietly. I've been watching. I hired a private investigator. I knew about Aaron before you did, and the others I knew, but I kept hoping I was wrong. I didn't want to believe it. My chest tightened, and I felt like I was suffocating. The guilt, the shame, it was all so overwhelming. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He knew. This whole time, I had been playing this game of lies, thinking I was the one in control. But he had been watching, waiting, knowing everything. I'm so sorry. I whispered, my voice breaking. James, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. You think that's going to fix this? He asked. His voice steady, but filled with a pain I had never heard before. He looked at me, his eyes searching, like he was waiting for something. An explanation that would make it all make sense. But there was nothing I could say. Nothing that would make it okay. I don't know how to make this right, I said, tears starting to well up in my eyes. I had no idea what to say. What could I say? The truth was, I had ruined everything. I had betrayed the man who loved me, the man who trusted me. And now, it was too late to fix it. I don't even know who you are anymore. He muttered, shaking his head. I don't know how to look at you. I don't know if I can forgive you. There it was. The bombshell, the words that broke my heart. It was all crumbling in front of me. James, the man I thought would always be there for me, was now pulling away, and it was my fault. I love you, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I didn't want to hurt you. I don't know what happened. I was just looking for something. I thought. You thought what? He interrupted, his voice sharp now, angry. You thought it would make you feel better. You thought it wouldn't matter. Do you have any idea what this feels like? I looked at him, and for the first time, I truly saw him. The hurt, the betrayal, all of it was there, raw and exposed. And it was all because of me. I wanted to say more, to beg for forgiveness, to explain myself. But deep down, I knew there was nothing I could say that would make it better. James turned away from me then, walking toward the door. I need some time? He said, his voice thick with emotion. I need to think. I stood there, frozen, as the door closed behind him. The reality of what I had done hit me all at once. He knew. He knew everything. And there was no going back. The silence in the house was suffocating. I stood there, staring at the door that James had just walked through, feeling as if the very ground beneath me had crumbled away. His words echoed in my head, over and over again. I don't know who you are anymore. It wasn't just a hurtful thing to say. It was the truth. I had destroyed everything, and now, I had to face it. The night dragged on, every second feeling like an eternity. I had no idea what to do, how to fix what I had broken. I paced around the house, my mind racing in 100 different directions, trying to find an answer to the unanswerable. But nothing came. There were no words that could undo what I had done, no apology that could make him forget. I had betrayed him in the worst way, and now I had to live with the consequences. Hours passed, and I still hadn't heard from James. My phone sat on the counter, still and silent. I kept telling myself that he needed space, that he would come back when he was ready to talk. But in my gut, I knew that this wasn't something that could be fixed with a few hours of solitude. It was much deeper than that. I had shattered the trust we had built over 10 years, and trust, once broken, is not easily repaired. I couldn't sleep. I lay in our bed, but the space next to me felt cold and empty. I had always taken his presence for granted, but now that he was gone, I realized how much he had been my anchor. How much I had relied on him to keep me grounded. And now, I had no one. The guilt weighed heavily on me, pressing down like 100-pound weight. I didn't know what to do with myself. The next morning, I was still in bed when I heard the door creak open. My heart leaped into my throat, but when I saw who it was, my chest sank. It wasn't James. It was my best friend, Rachel. She was the last person I wanted to see, yet somehow, I knew this was inevitable. She had always been the one to keep me grounded, to remind me when I was veering off course. But now, I could barely look her in the eye. I had betrayed her trust too, just like I had betrayed James. Are you okay? Rachel asked, her voice soft and tentative, as if she wasn't sure how to approach me. She had always been able to read me, and I knew she could see through my facade of composure. I shook my head, my lips trembling. No, Rachel, I'm not okay. I've ruined everything. I ruined my marriage. I destroyed the one person who ever truly loved me. She sat down on the bed beside me, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. Tell me what happened, she said gently, her voice full of concern. I couldn't hold back anymore. The floodgates opened, and everything came pouring out. I told her about the affairs, about how it started innocently enough with small flirtations, how I justified it, how I convinced myself it was harmless. I told her about Aaron, and then the others, and how each time, I had pushed the boundaries further and further. I told her about the lies, the secret texts, the late nights, and the guilt that had eaten away at me for years. I don't even know who I am anymore, I whispered, my voice breaking. I thought I was just looking for excitement, for validation, but now it feels like I've lost everything. I've lost him. I've lost myself. Rachel sat in silence for a long time, her hand still on my shoulder. When she finally spoke, it wasn't with judgment. It wasn't with anger. It was with the kind of calm understanding that only a true friend could offer. You messed up. But that doesn't mean it's the end, she said quietly. But you have to be willing to own up to it. You have to be willing to face what you've done and deal with the consequences. James isn't going to come back until he knows you're truly sorry. Until he knows you're willing to change. I nodded, even though I didn't know if I could ever change. I didn't know if I could fix what was broken. But Rachel was right about one thing. I had to face what I'd done. I couldn't run from it. I had to own up to my actions. I spent the rest of the day trying to gather my thoughts, trying to come up with a plan. But there was no plan. There was no magic fix. James had been hurt beyond what words could express. I knew I couldn't expect him to forgive me overnight, if at all, but I had to try. By late afternoon, I finally received a text from him. It was short, simple, and to the point. We need to talk. I'm coming home later tonight. I stared at the message for a long time, my heart racing. This was it. This was the moment where everything would either fall apart completely, or maybe, just maybe, we could begin to rebuild. I wasn't sure if we could ever get back to what we once had, but I had to try. When James came home that night, he was quiet, distant. I knew he was hurting, but he wasn't angry. Not yet. He was still processing everything. I could see it in his eyes. The confusion, the sadness, the betrayal. But there was something else, too. Something I wasn't sure I deserved, a glimmer of hope. I don't know what to say to you, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. But I need to know you're sorry. I need to know you understand what you've done. I am sorry, I said, my voice cracking. I can't explain why I did it. I don't even understand myself. But I know that what I did was wrong. I hurt you, and I ruined everything. I don't know how to make it right, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to show you I'm sorry. He didn't say anything for a long time. He just stood there, looking at me, as if trying to read my face, trying to see if I meant it. Eventually, he spoke again, his voice softer. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, but I'm not ready to walk away just yet. I nodded, knowing that this was the best I could hope for. Thank you, I whispered. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll prove to you that I can change. But deep down, I knew that the road ahead would be long and hard. Forgiveness, if it ever came, would be a slow process. And even then, things would never be the same. But I was willing to fight for him. For us. Because, at the end of the day, I loved him more than I had ever loved anyone.